Hey, Randy here, brand strategist and brand architect for the SI team. Last week we talked about beginning to define your brand, and this week I want to dive into the third phase of brand strategy, which is all about defining your brand archetype. Now, if you remember, brand strategy is basically the first step we take when we're attempting to get clear about your business and your brand. It serves as the roadmap to your business's long-term success and helps us to get clear on who you are as a business, who you're serving, and why you exist to serve them. Now, one of the biggest parts of defining your brand is understanding what the core foundation of your brand's personality and character is. Now, when we interact with people in the real world, we identify with them being a certain way, which usually places them into a certain category of a type of person. Some of the many personalities are those such as the protagonist, advisors, mediators, advocates, even debaters, and there's so many more. Now, these personality types help us to better define and even map how people think, operate, and execute within their life and among others. With brands, we want to take the same approach. That helps us to better align with who your brand will resonate most with. Now, the better we understand who your brand is, the better the world will. And archetypes and branding are used to guide and strengthen the brand's personality and character. And the great thing about this is, your archetype will remain consistent because it defines the values, traits, and the motivation behind your brand, making it simpler for your audience and customer to identify you. Now look, there are 12 archetypes in total, and we'll take a look at them in the following slides to get a better sense of what they represent and a few examples of brands that identify with them. The first brand archetype is the outlaw, rebel, and it's described as being disruptive, rebellious, and combative. And brands that associate with this archetype are Harley-Davidson and Diesel. The second brand archetype is the magician, and it's described as being mystical, informed, and reassuring. And brands that associate with this archetype are Disney, Coca-Cola, and Dyson. The third brand archetype is the hero, and it's described as being honest, candid, and brave. And brands that associate with this archetype are Adidas, Nike, and FedEx. The fourth brand archetype is the lover, and it's described as being sensual, empathetic, and soothing. And brands that associate with this archetype are Chanel and Victoria's Secret. The fifth brand archetype is the jester, and it's described as being fun-loving, playful, and optimistic. And brands that associate with this archetype are M&M and the Dollar Shave Club. The sixth brand archetype is the everyman, and it's described as being friendly, humble, and authentic. And brands that associate with this archetype are IKEA and Target. The seventh brand archetype is the caregiver, and it's described as being caring, warm, and reassuring. And brands that associate with this archetype are Pencils for Promise and Tom's. The eighth brand archetype is the ruler, and it's described as being commanding, refined, and articulate. And brands that associate with this archetype are Louis Vuitton and Mercedes-Benz. The ninth brand archetype is the creator, and it's described as being inspirational, daring, and provocative. And brands that associate with this archetype are Lego, Apple, and Adobe. The 10th brand archetype is the innocent, and it's described as being optimistic, honest, and humble. And brands that associate with this archetype are Aveeno and Dove. The 11th brand archetype is the sage, and it's described as being knowledgeable, assured, and guiding. And brands that associate with this archetype are Google, Oprah Winfrey, and CNN. The 12th brand archetype is the explorer, and it's described as being exciting, fearless, and daring. And brands that associate with this archetype are the North Face and NASA. Now, as you can see, by getting clear on which archetype your brand aligns with, we can begin to carve out the core values, traits, and overall motivation behind your brand. This will allow us to easily understand who we should be speaking to, which will aid in driving the overall look, feel, and tone of your brand, as well as help us in understanding the assets and deliverables that'll come down the road. Look, we went pretty deep today, but I trust all of this information is getting you even more comfortable with the brand strategy process. Next week, we're going to touch on my fourth phase, which is identifying your audience. I trust the information in this video brought you value today. And if you haven't done so already, give this video a like, hit that notification bell, and be sure to leave a comment if you have any questions on the information I shared today. Stay well.